Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today we're taking a plunge into a really foundational text. It's Isaac Watts's classic, The Improvement of the Mind.
Yeah, it really is foundation.
And this isn't just some dusty old book,
Mm-hmm.
It's packed with practical, timeless wisdom for anyone who wants to learn more effectively.
Absolutely.
Our mission, like always, is to pull out those key nuggets of knowledge, those insights that you can actually use.
And it's interesting how Watts himself described it. He called it remarks and directions for the improvement of the mind and useful knowledge. Said he worked on it for about 20 years.
20 years.
Yeah.
man.
And he breaks it down basically into two parts. First, how we can get useful knowledge, and second, how to communicate it effectively.
Okay.
So for this deep dive, we're really focusing on that first part, the how to learn bit.
Right, the getting of wisdom.
Yeah.
And what really struck me is that he's not just talking to academics here.
Not at all.
He makes his point that all persons are under some obligation to improve their own understandings. Doesn't matter what your job is or your station in life.
He even suggests setting aside like 1 day in 7 just for cultivating your mind.
It's a call for everyone to keep learning, which feels, well, incredibly relevant today, doesn't it?
Definitely. Lifelong learning wasn't just a buzzword for him.
Okay, so let's dig into his fundamental rules for actually approaching learning. He starts off really strong on the power of good judgment.
He does, yeah. He talks about the vast importance of a good judgment, says it can save you from many follies and sorrows, even much guilt and misery. It's like your main guide.
Your intellectual compass, kind of.
Exactly. But then he immediately balances that, which is interesting, with the need for humility.
Right, humility.
Yeah.
How does he suggest we cultivate that?
Mm.
Because you don't want it to turn into, being afraid to make any judgment at all.
Well, he says we need to recognize the weaknesses, frailties, and mistakes of human nature. He points out that even in something as seemingly straightforward as math,
Your mathematics.
mankind has been strangely bewildered, and he gives that great example of Arithmo.
Oh, the numbers guy,
Yeah, a complete master of numbers, apparently, but he struggled with the square root of 2.
which seems basic, but I guess it wasn't back then. Or maybe the point is.
The point is, it shows the limits. Watt says reflecting on things like that teaches you the poverty of your understanding and helps you think modestly of your present attainments. It's not about crushing your confidence, it's about knowing your limits so you can actually grow.
Okay, that makes sense. So, judgment balanced with humility.
Sure.
And he tackles something a lot of us probably struggle with, relying too much on just being, naturally smart or working really hard without thinking smart.
Right. He warns that having a ready wit, being quick on your feet intellectually, can actually make you despise learning and study.
So you just coast.
You coast, and you end up, as he puts it, growing old in ignorance. He uses these characters, Lucidus and Scintilla, as examples. Quick minds, but shallow.
And the flip side, just reading tons and having a great memory.
That's not enough either. He says large and laborious reading and a strong memory don't automatically make you wise. He quotes Horace, something about poets needing both genius and art.
Yeah, no art without a genius will avail, and parts without the help of art will fail, but both ingredients jointly must unite.
Exactly. Watts applies that to all learning. Talent isn't enough, and neither is just hard work on its own. It's the meditation and studious thought, exercising your own reason and judgment upon all you read. That's the key.
He mentions Memorino.
Ah, Memorino, who could recite a whole book of Euclid yet be no geometrician. He had the data but not the understanding. He couldn't use it.
Just recall, which sounds very familiar today with search engines and everything.
Information isn't knowledge.
And Watts really pushes back against the idea that learning is easy, doesn't he? He says thinking a life of learning is a life of laziness and ease is just wrong.
Completely wrong. He brings up Lord Chancellor King's motto, labor ipse voluptas. Labor itself is pleasure.
Finding joy in the effort.
Right. And he warns against folks like Otiosus, who went into scholarship thinking it would be an easy life and indolence and just ended up despised.
It really resonates now with endless online courses and articles. It feels easy to consume, but Watts is saying the real work, the valuable part, is the effortful thinking. Does he give tips on finding that pleasure in the labor?
Well, the implication is the pleasure comes from the mastery, from the thinking itself. But he does offer this really surprising optimism about the future. He says, don't assume learning has arrived at its perfection.
Like we know everything already.
Yeah. He asks, but may there not be Sir Isaac Newtons in every science? Even in theology, he points out difficulties and darknesses like the origin of sin or the Blessed Trinity, and he encourages sincere searchers of truth to keep looking for answers. He wants us to push forward.
Which naturally leads to his point about depth.
Hmm?
Don't just hover always on the surface of things.
Exactly. And that anecdote about Subito is perfect, isn't it?
Judging a massive book, an octavo, after reading half the preface.
Or the first 12 pages, just scanning for buzzwords like essence or substances. It's such a clear picture of superficiality. Skimming culture isn't new, apparently.
No, it seems not.
But he does add a practical note. He says, for subjects where, your job or your time or maybe just your inclination doesn't allow for deep study,
Yeah.
it's okay to be contented with an historical and superficial knowledge. Know where to invest your deep thinking energy.
That's good advice. You can't master everything. So consistent effort, depth.
Yeah.
He also talks about daily practice, right?
He quotes that old Latin proverb, nulla dies sine linea.
Let no day pass without one line at least. Learn something every single day.
And he brings up the Pythagoreans, how they supposedly reviewed their day every evening, asking themselves,
What have I learnt where'er I've been, from all I've heard, from all I've seen? Like a daily knowledge recap.
it's about making learning a constant habit. But that kind of effort needs an open mind. Which brings us to what he sees as the biggest obstacle.
Dogmatism.
Exactly, a dogmatical spirit. He says it stops the ear against all further reasoning. It just shuts up the mind.
He uses the example of Positivo.
Yeah, Positivo, who was so convinced about the Cartesian vortexes, Descartes' old theory about how planets move.
Which turned out to be wrong.
Right. But Positivo, when faced with evidence against it, was tempted now to wink a little against the truth. He couldn't let go of being right.
And Watts really takes that warning seriously.
Ooh.
He links that kind of intellectual stubbornness to, well, actual danger.
He does. He says a dogmatic person, especially in religion, is not a great way off from a bigot and could even become a bloody persecutor.
Wow. That's strong.
It is. He's saying closed-mindedness isn't just an intellectual failing, it's a moral one that can lead to terrible places. It takes courage, he says, to retract any mistake and confess an error, to value truth more than your ego.
To scorn those vulgar bugbears, those common fears that keep us stuck in our mistakes.
And he connects all this intellectual integrity directly to character. He argues that giving in to vicious inclinations, like whoredom and wine, as he puts it,
Basically, bad habits and excesses.
they debase the understanding and pervert the judgment. They cloud your thinking. He even uses the biblical idea of people being given up to a reprobate mind because they didn't want to acknowledge God, leading them to believe things Watts found absurd, like transubstantiation.
So clear thinking and moral living go hand in hand for him. Which leads to his, maybe, most surprising rule,
His final one, yeah.
which is
To implore constantly his divine grace.
ask for God's help.
Yes. Watts genuinely believed God could guide your thoughts, lead you into a large scene of useful ideas, or even arrange for you to meet someone or read something that gives you a breakthrough. More insight in an hour than you could obtain by a month of your own solitary labor.
So ultimately, wisdom comes from God.
For Watts, yes. It is the Lord who gives wisdom. That's the foundation for everything else.
Okay, so we've got these core principles: judgment, humility, effort, depth, openness, divine help. But how does Watts say we actually get the knowledge? He outlines 5 specific ways.
Right. And he's quick to say that just sitting alone thinking our own solitary meditations isn't really enough on its own. You need input from others from reading.
Makes sense.
But each method has its own pluses and minuses, its peculiar advantages and defects. He starts with observation.
Pretty much looking around.
Pretty much, he calls it the first means of our improvement. It's how we get our basic ideas, the raw data from the world.
So you should be trying to learn from everything you see or hear, right? Whether it's human creations in the city or nature in the country. He even suggests travel.
Yeah, bring home treasures of useful knowledge. Basically, pay attention, but there are warnings.
Right.
Like your mind needs to be free from passions and prejudices. Otherwise, it's like the man with jaundice seeing everything as yellow. Your biases color what you see.
Okay.
And the other big trap is false induction, jumping to big conclusions from just a few examples.
Ah, like his example of Euron, the young guy.
Right, who noticed frost 10 times when the wind was from the northeast, so he almost expected it should freeze when the same wind blew in July.
Huh. A good reminder that correlation isn't causation.
Exactly.
Okay, so after observation comes rating. This seems obvious, maybe.
Well, yes and no. The advantage is huge. Access to the best, the most labored and most refined sentiments from brilliant minds across history, and you can go back, review what you have read, mull it over.
It's like having Plato or Newton on call.
Kind of, yeah, but Watts insists just reading, even diligently, isn't enough. That's where he brings back the Memorino idea.
The boy reciting Euclid without understanding geometry.
Right. So the question is, how do you read actively? Watts says you should engage critically. Mark the faults or defects in an author. Try to summarize it, structure it better if it's disorganized, or even abridge it.
Really wrestle with the text.
Yes, he claims one book read over in this manner with all this laborious meditation will tend more to enrich your understanding than the skimming over the surface of 20 authors. Quality over quantity. Deep processing.
Method 3. Living instruction and lectures. Having a teacher or attending a lecture. What's key here for Watts?
The advantage is the immediacy. It can engage your attention more, be more lively and forcible. A good tutor can clarify things instantly, point out what's important, recommend other readings.
Keep you up to date even.
Yeah, tell you about new doctrines or sentiments before they come to be public. But the tutor is crucial.
What makes a good one, according to Watts?
Not just expertise in the subject, but also skill in the art or method of teaching, and importantly, patience. They need to adapt to different students and manage their own temper and conduct. No arrogance, no contempt. It's about nurturing the learner.
Fourth method. Conversation. Talking with others.
He calls it the next method of improvement. Big advantages. You get immediate help with confusing points. You can easily raise and resolve doubts, and it calls out into light what has been lodged in all the recesses of the soul.
It sparks ideas.
Exactly. He says conversation makes our minds more animated, our spirits act with superior vigor, our souls become sparkling, not just serene in solitude.
But he has a major warning here too, doesn't he? About echo chambers.
A huge warning. Never just talk to people who already agree with you. That just confirms your mistakes. He uses those great stories.
The King of Siam.
Right, who thought the Dutch were liars for saying water could become solid because he'd never seen ice.
And Tityrus the shepherd.
Who thought Rome must just be a really big village because that's all he knew. Perfect examples of how ignorance gets reinforced when you only talk to people like yourself.
So how do we have good conversations, especially with people we disagree with?
His advice is classic. Be swift to hear, but be cautious of your tongue. Listen more than you speak. Don't get frightened nor provoked by different opinions. He quotes Solomon. Answering before you hear is folly and shame.
Listen first.
And don't judge by appearances. He praises a plain speaker like Placido who could explain things simply and effectively, and others tried hard to copy but failed. Value clarity over fancy talk.
And the fifth and final method. Study or meditation. This seems to wrap it all together.
It really does. He says this is the step that makes knowledge become our own property. It's like digesting intellectual food, so it becomes part of you. It lets you go deeper than the other methods allow.
So observation, reading, lectures, conversation give you the raw material.
And meditation processes it, integrates it. That's why he argues reading and meditation should employ much more of our time than public lectures or conversation, although observation is always happening.
What are the pitfalls of meditation, though? Getting lost in your own head.
One big danger is getting caught up in words without ideas, especially, he notes, in theology, where terms can become orthodox sound bites with no real meaning behind them. He calls that folly and madness.
Using jargon without understanding.
Precisely. And another warning is trying to tackle stuff that's too complex too soon. Deep, dark, and abstruse matters.
Like Mathon with geometry.
Exactly. He was terrified by advanced stuff until his tutor wisely started him with basic lines and angles. He ended up becoming a top geometer. The lesson? Advance by slow degrees. Build foundations first.
Okay, so those are the 5 ways to gain knowledge. Watts also gets into specific intellectual activities like disputation or debate.
Yeah, and again, his focus is sharp. He draws a clear line between arguing to find truth versus arguing just for victory and vain triumph.
How do you argue for truth, according to him?
Key rules. Agree on your starting points, your general principles. Clearly define your terms, the meaning of the words. And crucially, don't change the subject. Avoid the dishonest artifice of changing the question. That just drags things out forever.
He really hammers the danger of just wanting to win. Feeling your argument weaken and then trying to sidestep.
Yeah, being tempted to step aside to avoid the blow. He shows how subtle this can be with those examples, Polyneides and Phytalio.
Can you remind us?
Polanyides tricks Incauto by shifting from God's general justice to Christ's specific innocence, subtly undermining a core doctrine. And Vitalio gets Phidens to doubt God's providence by questioning interventions in small things, slowly eroding his faith.
Well, those are like logical traps, seemingly small steps leading to big errors.
Exactly. It shows how careful you need to be in arguments.
He then talks about different styles of dispute, the Socratic method first.
Right, learning through questions and answers. He sees it as more easy, more pleasant, and a more sprightly way of instruction.
Why does it work so well?
Because it guides the learner to discover truth, as it were, by his own invention. When you feel like you figured it out yourself, you're much more likely to accept it and let go of your old mistakes. He even thought catechisms should be taught this way for children.
Makes sense. Then he mentions forensic disputes, like in courts or parliament.
Yeah, formal speeches for and against, then a judgment. And finally, academic disputes, the kind with a thesis defender, the respondent, and opponents using formal logic.
Syllogisms and all that. Does he like this academic style?
He sees some benefits. You examine a topic from all angles, get good at refuting errors, but he flags a major problem.
Which is?
If the whole setup forces one side to defend a point, even if it's weak, and the other side only to attack it, couldn't a bright young student just learn to argue against everything?
Becoming a carping critic instead of a thoughtful person?
Exactly. He suggests maybe these methods are necessary evils needed to teach students how to defend truth later, but there's a real risk of just training contrarians.
Okay, shifting gears from debate.
Yeah.
Learning languages. What's his take?
Very practical. First thing required is that you well understand the language. Can't learn from a text you can't read.
Obvious but important.
But he absolutely slams the common practice back then of making kids memorize long lists of words without any ideas under them. Rote learning.
What does he call it?
A piece of useless tyranny, a cruel imposition, and a practice fitter for a jackdaw or a parrot.
Strong words.
He felt strongly. For him, language is just a tool. He notes that grammarians or critics can be prouder than philosophers if they care more about sounds and syllables than clear and distinct ideas, meaning over mechanics.
Then he looks at the sciences broadly. He thinks we should know a little about a lot.
Yeah, get a general and superficial idea of most or all the sciences. Why? Because knowledge is connected. There's a certain connection among the various parts of human knowledge. Thinking across disciplines.
And he has definite opinions on specific subjects. Math.
He praises math for training the mind, fixing attention, improving reason, good mental exercise. But then he quotes Dr. Chain with a warning.
That too much math can be bad.
That if you go too deep, they become barren and airy studies. And worse, they can breed a secret and refined pride. A vanity totally opposed to Christian humility. It's that balance again.
Fascinating. What about logic and metaphysics? Often dismissed as abstract nonsense.
He acknowledges they get just contempt sometimes for being full of jargon and nice distinctions, but he defends their true purpose to help us use our reason well, to think clearly about any subject. They're tools for clarity.
And science or natural philosophy?
Essential. For clergy to understand God's creation, for lawyers dealing with physical evidence, he uses a drowning case example. Even for telling real miracles apart from fake magic tricks. It's about understanding the physical world.
Finally, he talks about poetry, poesy, not just fluff for him.
Definitely not just fluff. He sees real uses. One is memory.
How so?
Rhyme and rhythm, poetic numbers make things stick, add very considerable force to the memory. He gives the classic example.
The 30 days have September rum.
Exactly. Thousands remember the days in each month because of that little verse. A practical use.
And he also sees a higher purpose, something more spiritual.
Yes, this is really interesting. He says grand poetry, especially grand lyrics, have noble elevations of thought and passion that can lift the soul even to a divine pitch for devotional use.
So read Homer for spiritual insight.
Surprisingly, no. He actually argues you can find more sublime ideas in some of the best of our modern poets, and especially in the Bible Job, the Psalms, than in any of the Theban versifiers.
That's quite countercultural for his time, wasn't it? Prioritizing biblical or contemporary poetry over the classics.
It really was, challenging the standard academic hierarchy. He also adds that reading poetry helps you learn different ways to phrase things, and it's just a good mental break when you're tired from tougher studies, a sensible relief to the soul.
So, bringing it all together, what does Isaac Watts offer us today? This guy writing centuries ago? His roadmap feels surprisingly current.
It really does.
He's reminding us that real learning, true wisdom, isn't about cramming facts or winning debates. It's about actively engaging with ideas, asking questions with humility, and pursuing truth in this deep, rounded way that actually makes us better people.
And connecting it to the bigger picture, Watts constantly shows that this whole intellectual journey is tied up with our moral and spiritual lives. It's not just about getting smarter for its own sake. For him, the ultimate goal of knowledge, especially knowing God, is eternal felicity, a much grander scope.
Right, so for your own deep dive, maybe think about Watts's warning against that phrase, sixentio, sic sentiem, so I believe and so I will believe. He called it a prison of the soul, something that stops all mental improvement. It's about that intellectual rigidity.
Locking yourself in.
Yeah. So the question for you is, what settled opinions might you be holding on to just out of habit, or because your side believes them? And what could happen if you took up Watts's challenge? If you approach knowledge with maybe a bit more of that radical humility, that openness he talks about, always ready for new light?